All right, this is a video that I created probably a year ago, and I just never did anything with it, but it's kind of interesting to watch. And so I thought that I would throw it into something and get it online for you. So this is me using the stencil, and I have found that the stencil is really a challenge for some people to use. It is simple enough to execute if you know what you're doing, but the stencil itself is a little bit challenging, and I could probably improve the stencil. I just haven't had enough time to give it my effort, and I don't have my own way of cutting them, so it becomes a real challenge. You can see here that I'm getting it all placed, and I do use a ruler so that I can measure to make sure that it's even distance from each side of the paper. And this is what it looks like when you have a real simple template created. I did outline the fountain a little bit so you could see some depth there, and that's just to get it laid in the way that I prefer to do it. These are with watercolor pencils, and they're very relaxing to use. You apply the pigment to the paper, and then you can use water to make it into paint, and it has such a beautiful flow. It's very relaxing to use this medium, but it also provides a way for me to take supplies to a venue and not have a big amount of cleanup, because when you use something like acrylic, you have dabs of basically plastic that you are providing people to use, and it creates quite a mess. So here you can see that I'm adding some dimension. And do you see that I'm not coloring all the way up the petal with one of the colors, that I'm just highlighting the depth, the deeper spots where the sun or the light may not illuminate? So that's what I was doing with the lotus there at the top. And I do kind of jump around with using the colors. I know that I want some darker edge around the Fibonacci spirals. Here I'm marking in the tree, and you can see that the tree starts as a trunk normally does, a wider spot, and then I imagine the branches branching out and a natural way of the branches coming and growing. They don't necessarily weep down. They're always expanding and growing towards the sun. The Fibonacci spirals, I like to do blue around there to represent the air, but it could be any color that you desire. This is just how I'm using the stencil for this example, and I just thought it was kind of interesting to watch me fill it in. If you are doing your background, it helps to do the blue before you lay in even the tree, because blue is in brown. Brown is basically yellow, blue, and red mixed together in some variations. You can do the whole background in blue and then lay your tree over it, so you don't have to, like I just did here, fill in through the branches. But definitely lay it in before you have all the leaves if you're going to do it that way. That's a nice way to go about it. Here I've done the branches. I've picked a side of the tree that I feel is going to be the darker side, and I tried to also pick the same side for the lotus just because it needs to make sense. And I'm going in with small leaves on this one. Sometimes I draw great big leaves, and that to me represents expansion, but this many leaf idea represents abundance. So your tree can represent whatever it is that you want it to represent. There is a theory of thought that the branches can represent, the number of branches can represent something to you, some number specifically. This branching mechanism has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it looks like, from the main stem. Some theories of thought think that it should only have 3. I'm not quite sure what that's all about, but you can see here that I just keep adding in as I go. Now I'm going to give the fountain some attention. And the fountain in this representation has 4 divisions on each side. Those represent the 4 elements. I've masked in here the red in the middle represents the earth, then fire is on the other side in my version here. I'm doing the air on the outside that I've just colored in there, and then in between the fire and the air, I have water. So there is a fifth element, according to some, called the ether. I'm not portraying that on this, but you certainly could. The fountain is up to your own imagination. I like to think of the symbol as it is the concept of God or spirit, source, whatever you believe it to be, thinking itself into existence. It's the fountain is that which is giving all things life. The mass is the block at the bottom. Obviously, it's very difficult to imagine spirit coming from spirit into something tangible like a block or mass or the earth, but that's the block is what holds it all together. So you can see here that I'm just mocking that in with some different colors, and that represents the earth. In my understanding, it can represent whatever it is you want it to be. You can do all different kinds of colors. I love to watch how the water pools a little bit, and then I like to play with it to create little natural ways that the water seeps into the paper. That's a really fun method with this watercolor pencil. And I am by no means some kind of watercolor expert. I've just really basically learned as I go. And here I play around with the concept of shadows and adding depth to the box because again, the symbol has in my mind, it has depth. It needs to represent something more than 2D, so that's why I like it to have something of a box shape. I'm going in here at the last bit and I'm adding some of the other colors that I've used, some a little bit more blue through the whole thing to pull it all together and make it look a little more unified. I add in a little bit more shadows here up and down the trunk and a little bit more purple represented up in the lotus. And it's really just a way to play around and have some fun and to experiment with something maybe you've never used before. These watercolor pencils were something entirely new to me, and they're just really fun. You can see that when the paper is wet, you can get some nice dark color off the pencil when you use the pencil on wet. You kind of want to do that at the end and maybe not so much at the beginning because if you don't know what you're doing, as I proclaim that I don't for sure. And I go back in and then I'm adding yellow here because I felt as though I wanted to show the sunlight shining through the tree branches a little bit and adding just a little bit more light and depth. I believe I add just a hint of it up into the lotus as well. I like to think about the lotus reflecting the tree and the tree reflecting the lotus and everything just being connected to each other. This is life. This is creation. It doesn't need to be perfect. I do use in this example, I use the stencil, but if you want to make your image symmetrical, you can easily just cut out the pieces that you need. Cut out a Fibonacci spiral, cut out the square, cut out a lotus petal if you want, or create your own. It's not as difficult as you might think. You can copy a Fibonacci spiral, which is the creation, how things grow, creation. Excuse me. I'm outlining here with a pen just to give it a little bit more oomph at the end. Once everything's dry, you can do that. Don't try to do that with a wet paper, though. It doesn't work out so good. And I just kind of go back over everything that I want to stand out a little bit more. So I'm highlighting the different flows out of the fountain, and I'm making it, I'm just putting the last touches on, as you can see. And that is peace. That's the image of peace for the world, a new symbol for peace. We have an open call. We're looking for your art for September. The cutoff date is August 8th. please consider submitting your work. We would love to see it. Thank you so much.